Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar session. My name is Cyril Golin, and I'm very glad to host this session today and welcome Pierre Dumas from ADP, who will give us his testimony about implementing user access reviews at ADP. Pierre has a wealth of experience around IT compliance and user access reviews in particular. So I'm very glad that he accepted to join us today and share his insights. Hi, Pierre, how are you?
Hello, Cyril. I'm okay. I'm still okay. After it will depend on the questions that you will ask to me.
Don't worry. I'm sure everyone in the audience will be very kind to you and listening religiously to your gospel. Without further ado, maybe I will let you introduce yourself first.
Okay, so I'm Pierre Dumas. I'm IT Compliance Director for ADP in EMEA. And so I suppose you know ADP, but in case you don't know, ADP is the world leader in human capital management solution. So we are globally 60,000 people across the globe, covering the three regions, United States, EMEA, and Asia Pacific region.
Okay, so as we can see on the slide, it's a global company. I think it's a US-based company originally, right?
Yes.
So you are a SOX company, Sarbanes-Oxley, and you probably also have other compliance standards that you have to enforce internally.
Yes, in fact, we are engaged in the HR and payroll business, and payroll is part of the financial process that fall under the Sarbanes-Oxley law. So we are SOX internally as we are a US company, and we run payroll application and payroll process for many of our clients. And so this is why if our clients are under SOX law, then they have to audit us. And this is why we produce a SOC 1 report, okay, to have our auditors assessing our application with regard to SOC 1 repository, and then SOC 1 framework, and then we deliver to our client. We also have some large clients in the multinational space that we request SOC 2, which is an extension of SOC 1 for security. And we are also certifying ISO 901 standard and 2701 standards.
Okay, so that's a lot of compliance standards that fall on your shoulders as the IT compliance director. So today we're going to talk about user access reviews. Can you tell us since when you've been performing user access reviews, and how did it start, basically?
So, in fact, we perform user access review at least since it's in the legislation, a legal requirement for SOX. So SOX was introduced in
Early
2002.
2000s. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's early 2000 that we are performing user access review. So that's when it
how
started.
did you? Yes, how did you do at the time?
So at the time, well, I don't remember because it was a long time ago and I was not involved into IT compliance at that time. In fact, I started, I would say, between 2012 and 2013.
Okay.
And in fact, when I took the responsibility of the team, the user access review was part of the responsibility of the team. So for me, it started 2013, I would say.
Okay, so 8 years already.
Mm.
Okay, and so what was the process, or what were the tools that you have been using at the time?
So the initial scope, as we were IT organization, so the initial scope for us was IT process. Okay, so what do we need to control for IT? It's mainly infrastructure, databases, and application. And so mainly IT application, okay, application for, I don't know, release management, okay, the different software that we were using. And as IT is based in France, we were also very close from the French BU. And so we shared the same tool for IT application and BU application. So our initial scope okay, was infrastructure, database, and application for IT and France.
For the French business unit. Okay.
Yes.
In terms of the data sources that you, or the systems that you needed to review, basically, um, can you give
Yes.
us some figures? I mean, some figures about the number of systems at the time.
So at the time, so for infrastructure and databases, so it was the all the IT scope because IT was already consolidated. Because we started consolidation at European level in 2009. Okay, so in 2013, the IT was consolidated, and so the infrastructure size was several thousand servers. Okay, so we had
Okay.
to collect account for several thousand servers, and databases. It was also for all the clients, so it's also several thousand clients. And for application, I would say it was around 100 application.
Okay. So 100 application and several thousands of servers and databases
Yes.
that you had to collect to retrieve the accounts and perform the user access review.
Mm.
Oh wow, that's amazing. You've just told us that you started you started managing this activity back in 2012-13.
Yes.
And so sometime afterwards, you decided to choose the Brainwave software to automate the process. So can you tell us how did this decided, and what was the main concern at the time that you wanted to address?
Okay. So at the time, so it was, as we said, 8 years ago. In fact, I had a developer in the team maintaining the software, and um, in fact,
The software
we had
that you were using at the time, right? Yeah.
yes,
Mm.
and we had so a cycle for IT and the BU, and after this cycle, I had complaints for the BUs saying that the software was not up to date. Okay, and they had plenty of requirement for next cycle and plenty of ideas on how to implement it. So I said, thank you, Mr. BU. And I would say more or less at the same time, the developer, who was in fact a contractor, decided to change the client. And so I had unhappy client and no one to perform the maintenance.
Mm.
Okay, so I went to the boss and I said, okay, I have two choices. Either we rehire a consultant, restart from scratch, uh, reinvent the wheel, and I don't know if we will be ready to meet the BU requirement, or I go to the market and select a software product. And so the boss said, go to the market.
Mm. Okay, so we'll skip the selection process, so you chose the Brainwave technology. You've deployed it on an initial scope, which was fairly what you've just mentioned, right? The French BU and the French infrastructure and applications, correct?
Yes.
I would like to know what was the reaction of the teams, of the managers that um, saw this new tool and had to use it, basically.
Okay. So, in fact, do we talk about the initial reaction 8 years ago, or do we go to the global rollout of the tool? Because we started initially with France and IT, and then from IT we went to I would say EMEA, and after EMEA we went to US, and each during each extension scope we had different reactions. So
Well, you can share whatever you like.
okay, so initially, so when we had the initial rollout, people were rather pleased to have better user interface, and better tracking and better support. So that was the initial reaction of the user. So when we first installed Brainwave, the user were happy to see that we could answer to their requirements. And well, internally, I know that I had some internal fights because some people wanted to develop this application. Okay, so I had also some internal breaks because some teams, I could do it. We purchase a software product, but we only use 5% of the functionalities. Okay, so year after year and cycle after cycle. Then we extended the scope, and I think that now we are at full speed with Brainwave. So I can tell you another story. When we started the rollout in the US, the first concern of US people was not to spam VIPs. Okay, because we started with some very large campaign. We started with a finance application, and you know, when you hit the finance team, you have people who have very high privilege. Okay, I want people who can sign invoices of $1 million or approve procurement of okay, bills at $1 million. So they are very high in the company, and VIPs don't want to get bothered with this type of admin task. Okay, so first time, okay, we did some, I would say what we could with what was in Brainwave portal, because in Brainwave portal you can have exclusion list that you add manually, and then you restart the portal and it's okay. But we said, no, that's not what we want. We are really in an industrial phase. Okay, so we need to customize the tool and not to spam VIPs, and to introduce VIP management into the tool by customizing it. And so we could do it quite easily, because between the beginning and now we learn how to customize the tool. We have some internal competencies, and so we could very quickly add this type of new functionality that was not by default in the tool, but that was easy to implement with customization.
And so this helped with managing the change and having the users accept the new tool, I guess.
Exactly.
One other thing that you mentioned before, so you mentioned that the scope expanded from France only with the IT team, and then EMEA, and then rest of the world, including the US. So I guess that the scope in terms of applications and resources that were processed in Brainwave for user access reviews also expanded. So initially you said you were already processing thousands of servers and databases and hundreds of applications. What was the key aspect to successfully onboard so many applications at a global scale? How did you manage that?
Okay, so well, you said that the scope extended. It's true in terms of application, but it's not true in terms of team. Okay, so we are still managing it with a very small team. So how could we?
Message received.
So how could we achieve that? It's with a lot of automation and also some support, because some support and some delegation. Okay, so we could achieve that with the campaign manager that we use in Brainwave. I would say we did not have it at the beginning in 2014, but it was, in fact, our main driver for major upgrade of Brainwave, which is to get a better campaign manager. So now with the campaign manager that we have, we can so we continue to create the campaign template for the team, and then the team, each campaign owner, so each of my peers within each business unit is autonomous to manage their campaign. And so with a central team, it would be almost impossible to do. So from the beginning, we decided to decentralize the campaign management. And also, we wanted also, because at the beginning, we only had data from the identity and access management team. And a lot of team came to see us and say, Pierre, I have a plan to join the identity and access management, but it will take 3 months, 3 years, okay, whatever the user access management team can achieve. And they want it to be very fast. And they say, well, if you can handle only half of my application, I will have a dual process, okay, part in Brainwave, part out of Brainwave. Okay, so I want to have just one user access recertification process, do it or do nothing. So we said, okay, so we had the campaign manager, and what we wanted to do is to be able to add application very quickly. So what we did, we defined a standard template with Mr. Application Owner. This is our import template, and we created some tools to be able to import the template easily into Brainwave and to accept different customization, because everyone is not asking the same thing. Some people wanted to review by manager, some people wanted to have recertification by what they call a custodian. Okay, so we wanted to have this flexibility to support the different use cases that were reported by the team. And so we could do that with some customization file that are used by the Brainwave import process. So we have one import process into Brainwave and customization file, and everything is in the customization file. And then before Brainwave, because we had also one of the concerns of the team is to make sure to trust Brainwave. Okay, so and when you are a compliance team, how do you trust Brainwave? In fact, I give you 10,000 records to review. I want 10,000 records out of the review. I want everything to be reviewed, and I want to be able to demonstrate it easily to my auditors. So in fact, as it's my responsibility from my scope, I had the same concern, so I understood it very easily. And I had some, I would say, personal tools developed for my compliance that I developed out of Brainwave. And so I said, I cannot give my home cookbook to everyone. So we decided to implement some data quality check before Brainwave and into Brainwave to implement reports so that they have a full traceability. They gave me 10,000 records. We imported 9,988 because in your input file you had 2 duplicates. Okay, so this report, we do it before Brainwave upload. Okay, it's part of our data quality check because we also have data quality check, for instance, usually from application we reconcile with mail. Okay, and so if the same account is linked to several mail, we will not be able to know to who to assign it into Brainwave. Okay, so typically this file will reject before Brainwave. We say, well, all your accounts will have an owner who will be able to process you. Okay, otherwise, rework with your application owner, update the mails into the application, and when this is done, then we will be able to process you. And then after, into Brainwave, we can re-export the application file that was imported. And during the campaign, they can also export the campaign result before the campaign is completed. And when the campaign is completed, they have the compliance report, and everything must be in line. And with this type of traceability, trust, okay, people say, okay, Pierre, now I understand, I know how to use it. And then now it becomes, I would say, a fluid process.
Okay, so we understand that this is very standardized today from the way you are onboarding new applications and allow both to take very specific customization for each application, but in a standard way with a standard format to onboard new applications, down
Yes.
to the way you design the access review campaigns and enforce the completeness and accuracy of each review. You haven't mentioned how many applications, single applications, are you onboarding and performing reviews on today?
So I would say it is at least 400, but these figures varies quite quickly. So maybe suppose it's more now because
Yeah,
okay,
it goes automatically in the background. You don't even have anything to do to add new applications in the central team.
we just, in
That's
fact, we have
very
an Excel
insightful.
template. We
Yeah.
just have to declare in the Excel template, and that's it.
Okay. And how many access review campaigns are performed every year out of those 400 apps?
So, uh, in fact, I did some research, okay, some check on what we are doing. So, in 2020, we did approximately 100 campaigns. So a
Okay.
campaign for ADP, it lasts between 3 and 5 weeks. It depends. Usually US is shorter. In EMEA, sometimes we have some vacation period, and so people say, well, we need to wait everyone to return from vacation and make sure that they have some time. Okay, so sometimes it's 5 weeks, 6 weeks, but I would say ideally it's less than a month. And a campaign typically is 100 to 3,000 review tasks.
So it involves up to 3,000 reviewers in a single campaign, right?
Yes,
Right.
sometimes we had few with more, but okay, we never reached 4,000.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, very large number of reviewers. So I'm being mindful of the time. Um, let's get to the lessons learned somehow. One thing I was interested in is having your take about any cultural difference or geographical differences that you've observed while you deployed the solution across the globe.
So,
You
well,
mentioned the duration of the of the reviews, for instance.
yeah, the direction of the reviews. Well, I don't know if it's a cultural difference or maturity difference, but some users we have, well, some compliance team. We have the feeling that they do the review because they want it and they expect everything will be fine. But sometimes their auditor do not approve what they have done. And so after they become more and more cautious of
Mhm.
the quality of the review. So maybe it's a difference in maturity more than cultural differences.
Hmm.
in terms of acceptance from manager, so some manager are also very cautious. They take the time to review, and some they just okay, right click, select all, approve, still use, done, boom, finish. Okay, but yeah, we know.
We won't say whom.
Yeah, but with educating, in fact, we maintain a KPI of the ratio of access that were rejected. So ask for decommission in the review process. And in fact, it is continuous. Okay, because we could say, well, first campaign, we have a lot of cleanup, and after, we don't care, right click, just to please the auditor. But in fact, we have always people who say this needs to be removed. Okay, so we can say that even after several years and cycle, the tool is more and more accepted and better used.
Mm-hmm. And that's interesting. So you never reach 100%, how could I say, cleanliness of the access. There are always things that need to be revoked or adjusted,
Yes.
etc. There's always background noise that is caught by the review process.
Yes, always. I would say,
That's really interesting. Yeah.
yeah, one of the
But,
reasons is because normally termination is, well, sorry, recertification is not to manage termination. Normally, it's what I explain to the campaign owner when they give a file and we have a lot of orphan accounts. I say, well, uh, take care, because if you have orphan accounts in your review and you give it to your auditor, it will just be an evidence for your auditor that your termination process is not effective.
yeah, and
Because
there's an IAM system that should take care of the termination process. So it's not the review process that is in place.
exactly.
For that.
Exactly. So normally the review process is focused on role change. Okay,
Yes.
we replace
Okay.
an application by another. Okay, so those people should only be in read-only mode in the old one, and the new access are okay, or the person move from one team to another, you don't need this access anymore. Okay, so that's the goal of the recertification process. And in fact, it's much easier to do it into Brainwave than to do it into the IAM tool.
Okay. Okay. I got it. Maybe a word of conclusion. What are your upcoming perspectives? What are the plans for the system and for the UAR process at ADP? Any change in perspective?
So, first, in fact, we are a compliance team. And so into the compliance team, we manage Brainwave, which is typically a software activity. Okay, we have the compliance activity and the software activity. So we are more and more working with the identity and access management team. So we discuss about having the handover of Brainwave to the IAM team. There's some logic behind. One of the logic, for instance, the process of importing application very quickly into Brainwave could also be beneficial for the IAM, because they would like also to have the same application scope into the IAM tool. Okay, so we can discuss this type of synergy. And as I told you, we are a very small team. We have no real developer. We know how to customize, how to implement a control into Brainwave. We know how to import the data, but when it comes to implementing screen, modifying screen, implementing workflow, this is absolutely not our business. So up to now, we are using Brainwave professional services for this, and maybe by moving this to IAM, maybe they will have some developers
Yes.
who will be able to do it. So That's one part. The second extension that we are working is a segregation of duty, because we have testing the segregation of duty module. We have did some very small implementation, but for me there is a lot of to do in the segregation of duty. We also have implemented some controls and some reports and some control. And what's the difference between a report and a control is that when a report, you see something which is not good because Brainwave is a compliance tool. With a report, you have the list of what's not good. And if you want to register exceptions, okay, to keep track of the actions that were performed based on this report, you need to implement control into Brainwave or control into another tool. Okay, so right now we want to have more segregation of duty, better support of our user in the functional scope. This is more into the, I would say, the expertise of the team. And then we want to implement more control to have better traceability of the action taken, which are more in the IAM space. And yeah, and also to be able to use Brainwave data into other tools. Okay, because we have data lake for controls, and so we want to put Brainwave out of its silo, and so to use the web services that are offered by Brainwave to take the relevant information, process into Brainwave, and be able to export it and use it on our BI environment.
Okay, that's a huge that's a huge plan. So I guess retirement is not soon for you.
No.
Thank you very much, Pierre. So thank you very much for this presentation. The webinar is not over, obviously, because now we are going to switch to the question and answer section. So thank you to all our listeners. I would just like to remind you that in the GoToWebinar panel, you have a questions section where you can enter your questions. They will be displayed on my screen, and we'll be able to ask them to Pierre. And I see that we already have several questions, so you know the drill. I will let the participants a few minutes to type in their questions. Just a little word about Brainwave and our forthcoming webinars. So as you understood, if you don't know us already, we are a pure player for identity analytics, and especially the implementation of access controls and user access reviews in our software platform, and well, with a lot of very impressive customers such as Pierre at ADP, and thank you again for sharing this testimony, those lessons learned. I think all the audience understands that although ADP is a very mature organization, there's still a lot to do, and with a small team. Maybe next slide, just to remind you that we will have a demo session. The next webinar will be a demo of the software product, April 8th at 11 a.m. Eastern, or 5 p.m. for the European folks. So after having presented a Zoom on infrastructure review and having Pierre share his feedback with ADP, we will delve into the technology side and have a very detailed product demo. So I hope you will be able to join us. Let's get back to the questions and answers, and I'm browsing through the questions just to see if there are different themes here. Okay, one question I see here that will be of interest to you, Pierre. Are you onboarding SaaS applications or only on-prem applications until now? And what would be
Well,
your strategy for SaaS apps in this case?
well, for me, whether it's SaaS or non-SaaS, it's the same because well, for instance, and also it depends on the practice of the company. For instance, within ADP, we are using AWS as cloud provider. So
Yes.
what was done is to manage the access to AWS console and the Active Directory groups and Active Directory group provisioning is managed by the IAM tool. Okay, so typically for access to AWS, we have onboarded the access to AWS console as an application. We pull the data from the IAM. It's very easy. Okay, it's application managed by IAM. We have a different profile, and we ask manager to review the access to AWS console. Okay, and in the scope of the application, we have a lot of SaaS application. Okay, so AWS console is an example into IT, but I know we are using some SaaS application, and we review it as normal application.
Okay, so it's no different from on-prem applications in that case. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, we need the list of users with a mail. Okay,
Yes.
we import it into our template, and when it's in the template format, it's pushed to Brainwave and it's recertified as any application.
Okay, understood. Understood. I also have a question here. Was it easy to prove the ROI in a broader sense?
You have different way to discuss the ROI. So for us at the beginning, when we initially decided to implement Brainwave, in fact, the way to demonstrate the ROI was the cost of the person who was maintaining the application, plus the cost of the maintaining the skill if the person leaves, okay, versus the cost of using a software product and being able to be supported by an external vendor. Okay, so it's ROI both qualitative and financial. After we had some discussion with the different teams that we onboarded, but in fact, what they showed was I would say the the visible portion of the ROI. Okay, it's what time did it took you to make your review into whatever, if it's a shared file in SharePoint or Excel format or whatever. Okay, and they could say, well, it lasts 1 month and I had a return of 80% and I spent 10 days in manipulating. Okay, so with Brainwave, it still takes 4 months, but it's no more 10 days. Now it's 2 days, and you have 100%. Okay, so what's the best ROI? Is it to replace 10 days by 2 days, or is it to reach 100% recertification done and be able to demonstrate and have no more deviation in your audit report? Okay, so usually people think about the 10 days versus 2 days. Okay, but for me, that's not the real ROI.
Okay, so you managed to demonstrate both a financial gain, but also improve significantly the compliance status and coverage of the reviews.
Yeah. In fact, if if we look at the different use cases that we had for people coming here, so we have people who say, well, I have a large review, 3,000 users. I have a team of 10 Indian folks sending mails, blah, 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 and I have no more budget for those Indian folks. So I need to find a solution. Okay, so that's one. Okay, management cuts resources. So they need to automate. They come to us for automation. But we also have some teams that had a deviation in their stock report that say, I must improve the quality of my review. So that's the second use case. And the third situation, we also had some teams, and it was the external auditor who said, well, you should reach out to the IT compliance team because it's also easier for the auditor. Because if you have 400 applications, if it's 400 different processes, so the auditor received 400 files at different formats, they had to deal with it and give their opinion whether the recertification was good or not. Okay, and in fact, if we are able to have a standard process, give always the same file to the auditor, it's also much easier for the auditor. So short term, the auditor helps the ROI because it's easier for them. And a second step, obviously, the corporate audit team will renegotiate the price because we have simplified the process for the auditor.
Yes. I have a last question that maybe you answered indirectly just at the moment, but it's if we consider a smaller organization, do you have an opinion about when it becomes worth it to try to automate this process for a smaller organization?
Well, for a smaller organization, it's difficult to answer. In fact, ADP, it's 50, 60,000 across the globe. When we started, and it was IT and France, which is, in fact, I would say between 2,000 and 3,000 people. So it was much smaller organization. And also to give another point of view, at the beginning, even into IT, we had some very small campaigns. Okay, who is, I don't know, firewall admin. Okay, who is Active Directory domain admin. Okay, so at the beginning, we said, well, we don't want to put this into Brainwave because obviously we get the file, we call it's simple enough. And then after, when we gain maturity, we said, well, first thing, if we do the recertification manually, it's also because the access is not in the IAM tool. And if it's not in the IAM tool, we can recertify, but we have no visibility, no tracking on who approved the fact that this person has been added with this role. And so we said, go to, even if it's only 10 people, we ask you to go to IAM and use the provisioning process to be able to get the traceability of this the access request, who requested, who approved it, was it a permanent or temporary approval, etc. So we pushed even small organizations to go to IAM and add a workflow. And when it's in IAM, for us, it's easy. Okay, we even don't need to ask for the team, ask for the manager. It's one click, it's even 0 click, because everything from IAM goes down in just one flow. And we have the list in our Excel sheet template for importing, and it's part of a larger campaign. So for us, it's before it was easy to do, but even if it's easy to do, now it's fully automated. We even don't see it.
Okay, thank you very much, Pierre, for those answers. I would like to tell you many thanks from Aurelia. who's been
Thank
attending
you.
this webinar. And of course, from all the rest of the audience, myself included, thank you very much for sharing your insight and for this pleasant conversation together. I look forward to discussing with you again about those aspects. Thank you to everyone for attending this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it as well. You will receive the link with the replay as usual, except when we do something wrong with GoToWebinar. But no, I think this time we got it right. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you during the session on April 8th with the demo session about user access review in Brainwave. Bye-bye.
Bye.